Okay, so the pelvic floor, we've all got one. And it's usually only when you're pregnant and postnatal that you find out you've got one because they do quite an important job. So I've got your handout up there. So I've started this handout with a quote which says, pregnancy and childbirth can have a lasting effect on your pelvic floor fitness. So that's the first thing you need to know, can have a lasting effect. So the pelvic floor is a hammock-like set of muscles, and they basically support all the organs in the lower cavity, in the lower pelvis. So your bladder, your bowel, and your uterus. So for a woman, we have 3 organs that sit in the pelvic bowl, and they are held in place, stopped from falling out by this hammock of strong muscles. The main one goes from the pubic bone to the tailbone, so it kind of slings front to back. That's called the pubococcygeal muscle. But you've also got a few minor ones that come sideways. But this is the main one, the front to back. And what it does is it forms this diaphragm. It's called the pelvic diaphragm in some cases. In amongst the pelvic floor, we've also got sphincter muscles. So there's like a figure of 8 set of sphincter muscles that are the bowel, and which is I think it's one that's a figure of 8. I can't see it on here. It's not shown as a figure 8 here, but you've got 3 sphincter muscles for each of the orifices, for want of a better word. So you've got a sphincter muscle around your bowel, around your anus. You've got a sphincter muscle around the bladder at the front, and then you've also got sphincter muscles around the vagina as well. And so by exercising those 3 sphincter muscles, we can actually have some impact on strengthening the pelvic floor, which is why we often know that our pelvic floor muscles are this squeezing, aren't they? Squeeze and release, and they tell you to do things like, if you're not sure how to do it, stop your wee halfway through. You only should do that once because you don't want to do that regularly. So if you're not sure about your pelvic floor muscles, although that's given as advice to try to find where your pelvic floor muscle is, it's not something you should do a lot because women in pregnancy are very prone to kidney infections and UTIs, and so you don't want to be backing up your urine by constantly stopping the wee, when you go to the toilet. So it's just something to do once to sort of find, that's what that feels like, that's what that muscle feels like when I squeeze it. So it's just do it once. Okay, why should we exercise it? So during pregnancy, these muscles work hard to support the growing weight of the uterus, and at the same time, we've got this blessed relaxin and progesterone. Again, I talked about the softening. Well, it's making those muscles a bit looser as well. So 2 reasons why you have to strengthen them, because you've got excess weight, a growing weight, and also softening that's happening with the hormones. So it is important. Also, as the uterus grows, it puts pressure on the bladder. So if you've ever seen the image of a pregnant woman, when they do the sort of the side-on angle, the diagrams, and when you look at it and you see where the bladder is, it's right at the front of your pelvis, so it's just above your pubic bone really is where your bladder is, and then your uterus sits on top of it. And as your baby gets bigger, the uterus grows upwards, but that's more and more weight on your bladder. And it's really interesting when you see diagrams of this, because you see a woman at full term, the bladder is this tiny little sliver. There's just hardly anything there. So if you wonder why you keep peeing, that's why you've basically got a tiny bladder now. So that also increases the stress on the urinary sphincter. So again, you've got pressure on the bladder, which again puts pressure on that urinary sphincter. This can lead to what they call stress incontinence, which you may or may not be experiencing already. You don't have to say if you are or not. It's a given that most women, when they're pregnant, have a little bit of stress incontinence. And this may also carry on postnatally as well. It's really common. It's just one of the joys of being a mother. So exercising the pelvic floor during pregnancy can also improve the circulation to the muscles, and there is a theory that it also may help them to stretch more easily over the baby's head during the birth. So that's another thing to bear in mind. So during childbirth, the pelvic floor muscles stretch and separate to expand over the baby's head. So there's kind of a gap in the middle, and as your baby comes through the birth canal, these pubocondylar muscles separate either side. So you can imagine during birth they have a lot of stretching to go through. And this can also leave them weakened and slack. However, it's the weight of the uterus pressing down on your pelvic floor muscles for 9 months which does more damage than childbirth. You know, that pushing phase of childbirth is 2 hours max. For most people it's like half an hour. So half an hour of pushing versus 9 months of baby and weight and water, etc. So it's the pregnancy that does most of the damage. So even if you have a C-section, the chances are you still might have a weak pelvic floor. The joy. If you don't retone them, they may not provide adequate support to the organs, especially after multiple births, and this may lead to prolapse of the uterus, the bladder, or the bowel in later life. So menopause is usually another time in women's lives where, you know, things come back to haunt them. Oh, I really wish I'd done my pelvic floor exercises, because, you know, again, during menopause you have a lot of hormonal softenings. And a loss of collagen as well. So again, really important to, you know, tone the pelvic floor. It's a lifelong practice now, girls. It really is. It's something that really needs to be done regularly, and, you know, forever. ever. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about these, the Kegels, which they call Kegels, where you squeeze and release, and you squeeze and release. This does one element of pelvic floor exercise. But there's a more important one as well, and that is tucking and tilting. So when we tuck and tilt the pelvis, we are alternately stretching the muscles and then gathering them back together. So tucking and tilting is a really important exercise to do alongside the squeezing as well. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to look at both of these, squeezing and also tucking and tilting. And there's a few exercises on the sheet. Okay, so now you know all about your pelvic floor. So we'll make a start. So if you can come into a comfortable position, so you can shuffle all the way back towards the wall. Maybe take the legs out. It depends whether you're comfortable or not. Cross-legged, particularly if you're over 34 weeks, it's probably better to not cross the legs anymore now. You might want to just either stretch the legs out in front or come into butterfly position. So if you want to stretch the hips today, if you feel like your hips need a stretch, then butterfly position can give you a bit of a stretch across your pelvis. Or as I said, having the legs stretched out in front. So you find what is comfortable for you. And then coming in to stillness. And just rest one hand over the middle of your chest and the other hand over your baby. And then just close your eyes, and you're going to take a moment to just settle in to your practice this evening. So take a moment to be aware of your physical body, with everything that might be presenting itself to you. So just being aware of all the wonderful little niggles that you might be experiencing at the moment. And although pregnancy can be really uncomfortable, and there are often times when it feels extremely uncomfortable with all of the common conditions that it can bring with it, it's also worth cultivating an air of gratitude and really appreciating the privilege that we have of having these babies, of growing them, of growing these babies from seed and then bringing them into the world. And it is a privilege and a blessing. So we have to just take all the little niggles and see the bigger picture. And then turn your attention to your breath. Just notice how your breath is. So the breathing is often another casualty really of pregnancy. So as the pregnancy progresses, we often find that the breathing becomes a little restricted. So as you continue focusing on the breath, see if you can breathe into the sides of your ribs. So as we run out of space for the diaphragm to move down because the uterus is growing up towards the diaphragm, you might get a sense of space if you try and breathe sideways. So imagine that you're breathing into your armpits, into the side ribs, and also into the back ribs. So you might find you can just get a little more breath into the lungs. There's also another element to breathlessness in pregnancy, and that's actually nothing to do with the space in the lungs. It's again to do with the physiology. We have less hemoglobin in the blood, and the hemoglobin is the red blood cells that carry the oxygen around. So we've actually got less oxygen carrying capacity than we have outside of pregnancy. And then as you continue to work with your breath, can you just bring a slight restriction into your throat and make a sound as you breathe out, just as if you were cleaning your glasses or the screen on your phone, and just breathing in normally and then doing the same thing again. And then this time, as you continue with that ha breath, as we call it, see if you can close your mouth halfway through. So you're still making the restriction, but now the breath has kind of become internalized. See if you can maintain that restriction on the in-breath. So it creates a little snoring sound, but also slows the breath down. So we call this ocean breath, or in yoga it's known as Ujjayi breath. So just take a couple more of these slow, steady breaths. And the next time you breathe out, you can just relax. And then bring the hands all the way down. Okay, so let's get started with our pelvic floor. So if you come over onto your hands and your knees, and we'll start with this tucking and tilting movement. So it's quite easy to find it in your false position. Then you can go on to use it when you're sitting and when you're standing. So the first part of the move is to tuck the tailbone under. And what you're doing is you're moving your pubic bone towards your navel. And then the other part of the movement is to lift the tailbone up to the ceiling. Okay? So you can do it with your breath. You can breathe out, tuck the tailbone under, and move your pubic bone towards your navel. And then on the in-breath, lift the tailbone up as high as you can without causing any distress in your lower back. And just continue in that same way. So tucking on the out-breath and tilting on the in-breath. Do that a couple more times. Can you all feel that move? It can be a bit tricky because we're used to kind of moving the spine. If you've done any yoga before, you're used to moving the spine in this position, like in cat pose. So this is different. This is just a pelvic tuck. So if I come upright, I've got baggy clothes on today, which is not really helping, is it? So essentially what you're doing is tucking and tilting. Tucking and tilting. Okay, and it's that tucking under that gathers all the pelvic floor muscles and strengthens them, and then the tilting lengthens and stretches them. Okay, so just do a couple more of these. And And then we'll stretch out the lower back. So this is a really good bread and butter pose if you've got any lower backache, which most pregnant women will have at some point. We're going to go back onto the heels, so you need to make space for your baby between your knees. So take your knees as wide as you feel they need to be, so that you can get your baby snugly inside the legs, and that will obviously change as your pregnancy progresses. So we're going to tuck the tailbone under again, but we're going to hold it there this time. We're going to arch the spine up to the ceiling, push the hands into the floor, and then slowly take the hips back towards the heels. And you should get a really nice stretch in the lower back. Now, if you untuck the tailbone as you come back, so I'll show you what I mean. If you round back and then halfway down you do this, and you take the pelvis back, you're going to get a straight back, but you're not going to get this really nice pulling in the lower back, which is really nice. It's a decompression. So you need to tuck the tailbone under and keep it tucked under as you go back, and you'll feel the lower back being pulled and pulled and pulled. But it's really nice to decompress all the nerves in the lower back, which are really being jammed while you're pregnant. And then to come up, push the shins into the ground and see how you almost effortlessly rise up. So we're going to do this with the breath. I'm going to use that ha breath, the vocalized sound. So breathe in first of all, and then with your ha breath, tuck the tailbone under, roll the spine to the ceiling, keep the back in that rounded position as you gently take the hips all the way back onto the heels. So all of that happens at the same time. And then on the in breath, push the shins into the ground and slowly rise all the way back up. And then do the same thing again. So tuck the tailbone under, round the back, keep easing gently back towards the heels with that nice steady ha breath. So you've got lots of time to explore this move. And then on the in breath, push the shins into the ground and slowly rise all the way. Can you do 2 more? And then come all the way up, and then you can just let the breath find its own level. We're going to do a little bit of hip work today, so going alongside the pelvic floor. I want to do some squatting today, so we're going to do some looseners for it. So you're going to stretch the right leg all the way back behind you, push the heel away, and if you want you can do a little bit of rocking forwards and backwards, or you can just hold the stretch. It's entirely up to you what feels better. Just lengthening through that back leg. And then circle the leg around and bring it to the outside of your right hand. Is everybody okay here? Yeah, all good? So, ooh, it's briny. Will it come a bit further forwards? Have you got any issues with your hips?
No.
Tight. Good, well we'll loosen that out then, you're in the right place. So from here, just shift your weight forwards, and then that'll put the stretch into the back thigh, and then shift your weight backwards and you get a little stretch in the hamstring. So you're just easing your weight forwards, and then backwards, and then forwards. See, Bryony, I think that foot can go a bit further forwards. Yeah. There you go. Okay, so a couple more. Just notice how the hips feel today. And then coming into neutral with the shin vertical, and then you're just going to push up onto your thighs. We're going to have a little stretch in the upper body. Push down through the right foot, and as you push down to the right foot, you feel that kind of lifting up sensation. Take your arms out to the sides, turn the palms up, push into the right foot. Now lift your rib cage. Don't lift the arms so much as lift the rib cage. Let the rib cage do all the work. So now you've created a space. The shoulders are nice and relaxed. Now lift the right rib cage And you get a little stretch through the right side of your waist. Now lift the left rib cage and you get a stretch to the left side. Balance might be a little bit wobbly, so just notice if you feel a little bit, carpeted floor. It's not great when you've got a nice spongy mat. It's like trying to balance on marshmallows. Okay, a couple more to the right and then through the left. And then draw the arms back behind you, interlace the fingers now, squeeze the shoulder blades together and feel that stretch across the front of the body. And then release the hands down, slide that foot back, and then you're going to take the left leg back this time. So bring the ball of the foot into the ground, push the heel away so the left leg is straight. And then just rocking forwards and backwards if you want to, or you can just hold the stretch. So you choose which works best for you. And then from here, we're going to slide the leg around until it comes to the outside of your left hand. You might need to shimmy it a little bit further forwards once you get there. And then again, just rocking your hips forwards and backwards, so easing forwards, easing backwards. Notice how it feels on this side. It might be tighter, it might be looser. How's this for you, Sophie? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay, thank you. Just got a stretching across the front.
Okay, in a good way, in a bad way, in a not sure way?
No, it's okay. It's just everything's just very stiff.
And then as you come forwards this time, bring your shin into a vertical position, so you make sure your knee is over the ankle, and then push up onto your thigh. And then lengthen the tailbone. Now push the left foot into the floor, take the arms out to the side, turn the palms up. Keep pushing into the left foot and then lift the rib cage. So draw your rib cage up and away from your baby. Relax your shoulders and then lengthen the left rib cage, left side of your rib cage up, and then lengthen the right side of your rib cage up. So nice lateral stretches, create space between you and your baby. So again, as we were talking earlier about indigestion, it's these kind of lengthening poses that can really help with indigestion. And then from here, just reaching your arms all the way back behind you, interlace your fingers, squeeze the shoulder blades together, and again feel that stretch across the front of the body. Take a breath. And then bring the hands all the way back down. Bring the knee back. Make space for your baby. Again, roll the spine to the ceiling and shift your weight all the way back onto your heels. Maybe have a little sway from side to side if that feels good. And then push up onto your knees. So tuck your toes under, walk your hands back, and then lift the knees off the floor. And then drop your heels to the ground, but make space for your baby. So you might want to take the legs a bit wider. And then just dangle for a moment. So just easing from side to side, lengthening through the spine. And then push the feet into the ground, bend the knees a little bit more, and slowly uncurl. And come all the way up. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit more tucking and tilting. So this pelvic floor, tuck and tilt. So you can bend the knees a little bit. You can rest your hands on your thighs or onto your hips. And then we're going to tuck and tilt. It looks really bizarre. It might be easier than doing it in a kneeling position. So On the inhale, if you want to, you can tilt the tailbone back, and then on the out breath, just tuck it under so the pubic bone lifts up. And you need to really keep some bend in the knees. And then work with your ha breath again. And in some ways, when you do the standing variation, you can almost feel that knitting together of the pelvic floor muscles on that scooping action that comes on the out breath. So just do a couple more. Your thighs burning yet?
No.
And then just come all the way up. Okay, give the legs a little bit of a shake. So, as I mentioned earlier, I want to do a little bit of work on squatting today as well. And the reason for that is that squatting is the #1 position for delivery. And this is a position that women have used for the actual delivery stage of labour since the beginning of time, because we're quite wise women. We know what we're doing. And so as soon as humans walk the earth, women would go into a quiet, dark space, squat, push the baby out. So in stage 1, what you want to be doing is moving the hips. We've been doing a lot of this, and we will continue to do it, every week. So stage 1 of labour is your dilation of the cervix. That's the long bit. That's the bit that goes on and on and on. And so moving your hips at this point in an upright position, either on your board or standing or on all fours, is quite useful. So every time you have a contraction, you move the hips. However, in stage 2, you've got a very different job to do now. In stage 2, your cervix is fully open, and now you are pushing your baby through the birth canal and out into the world. It's a lot shorter. It's a lot shorter in terms of time. It's the stage 1 that takes the longest amount of time. So with stage 2, squatting is the best position because it allows the biggest opening in the pelvic outlet, because it moves all the bones out of the way. And on top of that, you've got a lot of downward force. You've got the most downward force to help you in your body than you do in any other position. Okay, so it's one of the positions that is recommended as being the best for the delivery stage of labour. Having said that, we don't squat in the West, so it is quite difficult for most women to find a good squatting position. Having said that, a lot of hospitals now actually have squatting devices. They're bringing birthing stools back. This is what women used to birth on, birthing stools. Basically a toilet seat on legs, a stool with a hole in the middle for the baby to come out. But it allows mum to really squat down, and they're bringing these back. They've got other kind of inflatables that do the same thing. So there's lots of equipment now being brought back into the delivery suite that will allow you to squat if you wanted to. So, but we'll just have a look at these positions. So, take the feet probably a little bit wider than shoulder height. And we're going to do this with the pelvic floor as well. So we're actually going to engage the pelvic floor while we do the squatting. So when you press your feet into the ground, what you'll notice is a bit of strength running up the insides of your thighs, and you might even feel a little bit of pelvic floor gathering. So when we push the feet into the ground, you are beginning that process of strengthening the pelvic floor. And what we're going to do is use straight legs, and then on the out breath, we're going to bend the knees. And although we're bending the knees, we're going to push into the ground, and we're going to pull up the pelvic floor muscles, so a bit of a squeeze. And then we inhale, and we come back up. You can put the hands wherever they want to be. You can use your ha breath as well. So on the out breath, pushing down. Use that foot press to come up, so push the ground away from you as you breathe in, but keep that pushing action in the floor, and at the same time really engage your pelvic floor muscles. And when you come up, if you squeeze the pelvic floor muscles as well at the same time as pushing the feet into the ground, you can feel the pelvic floor muscles even more as you do that. Okay, so a couple more. You can use your ha breath on the exhale. So this is one of our birthing breaths. So again, we have a lot of different breaths for labour. Okay, one more. the feet in until you come back to standing. Okay, that's looking good. How did that feel? Was all right? Nobody, no untoward business going on there? Okay, so we'll look at some bigger squats. So now we're going to have an inner thigh stretch. So you're just going to sweep the weight across to one side and then the weight across to the other side. So push into the opposite foot to take your weight over, and then you push into the opposite foot to take the weight over. So again, this is stretching the inner thighs again, which can help with your squatting. And then we're going to take the arms up and over the head. So again, another really nice heartburn thing is to take the arms over the head. And we're going to circle them all the way around. So as we shift weight from one side to the other, we're just circling the arms all the way around. Now, if that feels okay, we can deepen the kind of squatting action by bringing the hands down to the floor. So you have to go deeper into your squat. But if that's not comfortable, you don't have to do it. So you choose where you want to be with these movements. So you can see we're moving through a deep squat. Now, the next time you take the arms up over the head, you're going to go the other way. Just to mess with your brain. And then we can finish and come down. Now again, bring the heels in, toes in, heels in, toes in until you are all the way back up. And we'll just finish this section with a balance. So we'll start by coming up onto the toes and then we'll take the balance a little bit deeper. So have the feet about hip width apart. And you can work with that ocean breath that we did at the beginning, where you are making the restriction around the throat, a little bit like sighing under the breath. As you breathe in, slowly rise up onto your toes. Let the arms rise up, but lift the ribs away from your baby, so don't use your arm muscles to come up. And then on the out breath, circle the arms all the way around. Now, if you've got a really spongy mat, you're probably going to struggle, so you might want to come onto the carpet, because you've got, like I said earlier, carpet and spongy mat just means marshmallow. So you're going to really struggle with your balance. That's why I stepped off mine. And then same thing again, so breathing in, push up onto the balls of your feet, lift the rib cage up over the head, and then circle the arms all the way around. We can take this into a deeper squat if you want to, and then we're going to cross the arms in front this time. Cross the arms in front, come up onto your toes, so that's the inhale. And then on the out breath, we're just going to bend the knees and come down into a slightly shallower squat, but keep the chest upright. And then we rise up on the inhale, arms cross in front. And on the out breath, just dropping down into that squat. And as you come up, push into the feet, then let the heels come up. And dropping down. And one more time. And then slowly rising up. Okay, these squats are all looking pretty good. So we're just going to have a little balance. Now, if you feel that your balance is a bit wonky today, you can always just rest your fingertips onto the wall. And if you feel that you can hold your balance, you just move the fingers away. So, you know, use the support of the wall if you need it. It is tricky balancing on a carpeted floor. Having said that, I find in all the classes I teach that actually pregnant women are the best balancers. You have a very pronounced centre of gravity. And so I always find that, you know, pregnant women balance really well. So don't prove me wrong. Might not feel like it. So just spread your feet. And one of the things you want to do is make the feet really broad. Having said that, in pregnancy, again, you know, feet spreading goes with the territory, doesn't it? So what you're going to do is press your right foot into the ground. And as you press your right foot into the ground, that left knee will want to come up. And then we're going to circle it around and bring it back down. You can let the toe touch the floor, and then you're going to circle it around again. So a little bit of hip opening. The best thing to do is to let your gaze rest on the floor. So one of the things we do wrong when we're trying to balance is we look around and we see everybody wobbling. So it's quite useful actually. Now go swap legs, let's swap over. Push the left foot into the ground. Remember, don't lock that left knee, otherwise it will tilt your pelvis forward. Keep it slightly soft. Push the left foot into the ground, let the right knee lift up. And circle it around. And then bring it back down. Now turn the right foot out, take the leg with you. And you've got a couple of options for your balance. So first stage is to let the heel and the sole of the foot rest against the inner ankle, and your toes are just on the floor here. You're keeping the supporting leg nice and soft, pushing down to the ground. Then, if you feel strong, you can slide the foot up the leg. Try to avoid hooking it over your inner knee because it's not good for the knee ligaments. And then you can bring the palms of your hands together. Now, this is an interesting little practice. Push the palms of your hands really firmly together. And this works your pectoral muscles. Now, your pectoral muscles are the muscles, probably the only muscles that are supporting your breasts. Most women during pregnancy, their breasts grow, and so you want to have good support for them. So pushing the palms of the hands together can help with your pectoral muscle support. And then release, bring the knee back to the center and then drop it down. And a little wriggle, a little stretch. And then take the weight into left leg. Keep the knee slightly soft, push into it, let the leg come out to the side, and again find the position. So you might want to start with the toes on the ground, and you might want to slide the foot up the inner shin, bring the palms of your hands together, fix your gaze on the floor, and then again just pushing into the palms of your hands. So see if you can feel a little bit of strength and support. Keep the breath nice and slow. And then release. Come all the way down. Lip shake again. And then from here, we're just going to curl back down. So take your time. Just have a little dangle and then walk your hands forwards until the knees come down to the floor. And then from here, just come and sit into a comfortable position, however that is for you. Grab a quick drink.